All right, you guys, welcome to class. We've been talking about motion in a couple of different ways. We've been using words to describe motion. We have been using graphs to describe motion. And today we're going to use equations to describe motion. We're going to be talking about the kinematic equations. When talking about kinematic equations, we are going to be focusing on the 5 variables. We have a displacement, which is represented by d, or delta x. We have time, we have acceleration, final velocity, and initial velocity. The variable that is going to be missing out of those 5 variables will allow you to select the equation that is appropriate. Let's take a look at the kinematic equations. What I'd like you to do is pause the video and write this down in your notebook. Once you've done that, what you are going to do is you are going to put a check mark underneath the letter if the equation has that letter. So for example, we have a D here, so we put a check mark right here. We have a velocity final here, so we put a check mark right there. We have a velocity initial here, we'd put a check mark there. We have a time here, we'd have a check mark there. When the variable is not present in the equation, I want you to put an X. We do not have acceleration, so you're going to put an X right there. Again, pause the video and complete this. Since you paused the video and you finished completing that chart, what I'd like you to do now is think about what's called information mining. So the most important thing in physics isn't whether or not you get the correct answer, it's your process for how to get it. So essentially, can you read the problem? Do you know what the question is asking? I'm going to go ahead and split my screen here. So I'm going to move this up here. So it says, actually, let me pause for a second. This is going to be a question that we're going to work on that you'll have in your homework later. What we are going to do is go through the question together and information mine this question. All right, so the first step for information mining says read the problem until you come to a number. Stop. Write down the number and its units. Let's go ahead and do that. Black here. In getting ready to slam dunk the ball, a basketball player starts from rest and sprints to a speed of 6.0 meters per second. Stop. Write down the number and units. Meters per second. Sorry for my sloppy handwriting, guys. All right. Go back to reading until you come to a number. Stop. Write number and units. So we ended right here. And sprints to a speed of 6 meters per second in 1.5 seconds. Go ahead and write that right here. I see a number, I see units, we stop. Let's see, what does it say next? Keep reading. Assuming that the player accelerates uniformly, determine the distance he runs. I don't see any more numbers and units, so let's keep moving on here. So what is the question? Okay, so I'm going to come back over here. Assuming that the player accelerates uniformly, determine the distance he runs. So distance, the change in position. I know that that's represented by X. I don't actually have a number for that, but that's what the question is asking me. It wants to know what X, or you can put a D there for displacement or change in X. I'll go ahead and put the delta X right here for you guys. Okay. All right, so now that we've got the question, it says, identify the variable letter that each number represents. So meters per second, we know that's velocity. Seconds, we know that's time. Okay. So you've got 1, 2, 3 variables. But Ms. Moore, you told us that if out of the 5 variables, we're going to have 4 of those, and whichever one is missing, it's going to help us pick which equation to use. But we only have 3. What's that 4th variable? So let's go ahead and reread through this again. In getting ready to slam dunk the ball, a basketball player starts from rest. Okay, if I'm starting from rest, that means that my velocity in the very beginning is going to be 0. meters per second. So I'm going to go and write that down. And I'm starting from rest. So my velocity initial is going to be 0, which means this must be, in sprints to a speed of 6 meters per second, the final velocity. Okay, so at this point, now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 variables. Perfect. Okay, so now my question for you guys, oh, got to get out of there. Go ahead and just push save. Okay, close out of that. Okay, so it says use information mining to find what variables are part of the problem. For this problem, we have final velocity, initial velocity, time, and delta x, or displacement. What variable is missing? Select equation missing that variable. Stumbling over my words here. So let's take a look what we have. Your chart should look something like this. Of course, for every blank spot there is, you'd have a check mark. So we are missing, let's see, acceleration. So the equation that doesn't have acceleration in it is this one. So to solve this problem, we would use this equation. Now keep in mind, Ms. Moore does not care so much about the answer. She cares how you get the answer. She cares that you know how to read the problem and understand what the problem is asking. So before we do anything with numbers, we have to make sure we understand, we have to information mine and then figure out what equation to use based on what variables are given. All right, so for your homework, we've already done the first one together. So you're basically going to write in the numbers that you get when you information mine. So for example, for this one, acceleration, you'd put an x right here because we did not have acceleration. For the initial velocity, you'd write 0 meters per second. For a final, you'd put 6 meters per second. For time, you'd put 1.5 seconds. And then for delta x, you just put a question mark. Based on the variables that you do and do not have, you'll write down the equation. You know what equation to write here. What I'd like you to do is fill in all of the variables first and select all of the equations first. Once you've done that, then you're going to solve for the variable if needed over here. You will not need to solve for all of them, only a few of them. Once you've done all of this section over here, the very last thing you're going to do is plug in numbers. So you'll take this equation and you'll plug the numbers into that equation, and you'll write out all of your work here. I don't want just an answer here. I want the setup here with the numbers in that equation. And I don't want the answers at all. Okay, you're just gonna plug. Oh, actually, I do want the answers. Tricked ya. Okay, so you are gonna plug in the numbers and solve the problem, but I don't want just the answer here. I want the setup here. Okay, plus the answer. Don't forget your units. And the last thing to think about. Oh, here are the questions for you guys. Okay, they're all there for you. And again, are there any problems where you have to solve for the variable? You will not have to solve for all of them, only a few of them. If you do have to solve them, you'll put it right here in this column. Okay, so if you have questions with this, be prepared. Come to the Zoom meeting with your questions, so that way I can help you out. Here we go.